Hello, so this is our COVID Roundup and CDC update for February 14th, 2025. So starting off, we see that LP A.1 has increased dramatically since the last reporting period, which as a reminder was only 1 week ago. So last week it was reporting at 20% of all variants by proportion. Now it's sitting at 31% of all variants by proportion. That's an increase of 11% within a week period. That's a very rapid growth. So we have that rapid growth with LP A.1. XEC, as we stated last week, is working its way out. It's decreased to 37%. So if we look at the prior week, it was about 41. So now it's 37% of all variants by proportion. Why does this matter? Well, we know that LP A.1 sufficiently escapes immunity from prior infection and from prior vaccination. So we know that this one is an immune evasive variant, and it's outcompeting XEC very quickly. So this means that since COVID waves are fueled by this type of thing, that we're going to be heading right back up in the data, and that is what we are actually seeing, is that people like Mike Horger are calling it a camel hump wave, and that's because, as we were kind of predicting earlier, about a month and a half ago, that LP A.1, because it's a new variant that can sufficiently escape immunity, it seems to be more infectious, more contagious, because it binds tighter to the ACE2 receptor. So it can bind tighter, meaning it's more likely to infect you when it comes in contact with you. So we have a sufficient immune escape, we have a high ability to infect others, which means that we have a variant that can fuel a wave. And interestingly, we're seeing a camel hump, or the data start to head right back up again. The next thing I want to bring our attention to is this COVID variant map right here. So some weird things are happening. So if we look at New York, so this is from October 19th, 2024. This is just the most recent image I had where it actually included the date. So if we look at New York, we see that New York is no longer reporting COVID variant data, which is interesting. On the other hand, if we look over to Oregon, over here, we see that they weren't reporting COVID variant data, but now they are, question mark. And then we've also lost some facilities like in New Mexico, and then other places throughout the country. So you can see like this one had 2, now it just has 1 here. Not really sure what's happening, what's going on here, why some places are losing data, some are gaining COVID variant data. Very odd. Just wanted to bring that to attention as a note. Next, look at the raw wastewater data reported by the CDC through the NWSS program. We click on this link, which will bring us here, and we can see an interesting trend. So we're seeing that still we have pretty high levels in the Northeast, in the East, in the Midwest. And again, we're still starting to see increasing levels over here in the West, and a little bit in the South. So that is interesting. So places in the Northeast and the Midwest are still having pretty high levels. So when we look over to wastewater scan and the 148 reporting wastewater facilities to wastewater scan, we see that there's starting to be a bit of a rebound where places are heading right back up. So let's scroll in and see if we can grab some of these facilities. So the first one that's heading up is Warren, Michigan, where it's having a big rebound spike starting around January 28th. It's heading right back up. We have other places like Memphis, Tennessee that are heading up, Union Beach, New Jersey. And if we zoom in even more, just to look at the overall trends, we see that a lot of these places are having an upwards trajectory. So this is another indication that things are indeed heading right back up again, that second camel hump, which is interesting. So there it is for the full picture again. Now, the interesting thing is that when we look over to California in wastewater scan, so going to the west, for the 28 reporting wastewater facilities to wastewater scan, we still see that California hasn't really hit that winter wave just yet. They haven't felt it. They haven't experienced it. But interestingly, our lows right now are still within the range of our peaks of the 2021 winter and the 2021 summer waves. So in a relative sense, they are not low. They're just low relative to like our past big winter waves and our past big summer waves, but it's still, I wouldn't call that low levels that we're experiencing right now. So if we look into it, we can see that it's still pretty much flatline. There is an indication that some places are starting to spike upwards, but again, the overall trend in California in the west here is that we're going up by small degrees, but there hasn't fully been a winter wave just yet, at least in the west. Now, quickly looking over to New York State and their wastewater surveillance program. As a reminder, anything that is dark blue is low levels of COVID in the wastewater, anything that is light blue is moderate levels, and anything from yellow to bright red is high levels of COVID in the wastewater. And as we can see, nothing at New York is reporting at the lowest levels. The majority is reporting at moderate levels. And interestingly, when we look at the facilities that are reporting at the highest levels, it's decreased from about 38% to down to about 32% reporting at the highest levels. So this shows us that COVID in the wastewater is decreasing in concentration in New York on the general trend. Now, looking to the CDC's COVID epidemiologic tracker, we see something a little interesting. We see that there's a high divergence happening here, where some areas appear to be growing, some areas appear to be decreasing, which might be like an indication of what we were talking about before, that's sort of entering into a biphasic state where you have basically the eastern half of the country going up earlier than the western half of the country, where we might be going out of phase with our waves. That's sort of my indication or theory of what's happening. I guess my inclination would be the proper word. The theory of what's happening for why California and the west part of the country has not really experienced a true COVID winter wave yet. That's my current working hypothesis. So we're seeing sort of this weird split that's happening, which is interesting because like see how tight the confidence intervals are with the data here, and now it's just kind of going either direction pretty wildly. And when we look over to the Walgreens Respiratory Index Tracker, we see something interesting as well, where basically the whole southern half of the country is pretty hot, as well as the upper west is growing in terms of COVID positivity testing. And then quickly looking over to Verily, we see that we had that early spike around January 1st, which is normal. It went down, but then we're starting to see levels start to head up again, particularly in the Northeast, the Midwest, and then starting to see increasing levels in the South, although it's holding pretty constant in the South and in the West. Now, this camel hump isn't completely unusual. It's sort of unusual that it's happening throughout the rest of the country, like the entirety of the country. At least in the Northeast and the Midwest. But if we look over to 2024 winter wave, we see that we had sort of a small bump around mid-February, with this happening more obviously in the winter of 2022 to 2023, where it basically peaked, went down to January 16th, and then was right back up again, at least in the Midwest. So this has happened in regions, but this hasn't necessarily happened in multiple regions at the same time just yet. So this is unusual in that sense, but what's most likely driving it is due to the emergence of LP A.1, and that's probably why we're seeing this in the data.